Fresh cracked egg, sausage, melty cheese, and a toasty English muffin.
Honey? I appreciate you repainting our living room, but you're so into your McDonald's sausage McMuffin with egg, you've also painted the sofa, and the fish tank, and the cat.
Teal does bring out Mr. Pickle's eyes.
Right now, buy any size McCafe Premium Roast Coffee Sausage McMuffin with egg or McChicken Biscuit and get one for $1. Price and participation may vary, valid for item of equal or lesser value. For a limited time.
Hi, welcome to Metro by T-Mobile.
Hi, my dad is in serious need of an upgrade.
Yeah, my phone's a fossil.
He needs a new phone and a new network stat.
Well, when he switches to Metro, he can get an amazing iPhone 7 with HD Retina display for just $99.99 after ID validation.
Wow, $99.99?
Bye-bye, fossil.
Requires porting of eligible number not currently active on T-Mobile network or active on Metro in past 90 days. With validation of ID. An independent database limit 4 per account/household. 32 gigabyte model only. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Welcome to the Filmtrepreneur Podcast, episode number 11. He is most powerful who has power over himself. Seneca.
This is the Filmtrepreneur Podcast, where we teach you the top strategies, tactics, and growth hacks that every indie filmmaker needs to know to make money with their films. We are the podcast that puts the business back into show business. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Filmtrepreneur Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Blackbox. Now, guys, as filmtrepreneurs, we're always looking for a little bit of side cash, a little bit of extra revenue streams, and Blackbox does that in spades. What they do is allows you to sell your stock footage, footage that's sitting around in your hard drive from old shoots or stuff that you're actually creating for the stock footage market, but it allows you to submit to all the stock footage platforms at once. It handles all the technical submitting and also payments, so you can get all your payments out of one platform as opposed to going to all these other places and signing up everywhere. It does it all for you. I've created a really, really nice revenue stream from Blackbox, and it is a passive revenue stream, which is amazing. So if you want to check it out, head over to blackbox.global to find out more. Today's show is also sponsored by Full-Time Filmmaker. Now, Full-Time Filmmaker is easily one of the craziest online film schools I've ever seen. It has over 40 hours of stuff, and it is amazing. Whether you're just starting out or you've been a filmmaker for a long time, this course really covers a lot. It goes into all the equipment you should buy, the technical aspects of things, the creative aspects, as well as editing. So he has a full course on Premiere Pro, on Final Cut X, and then also goes really deep into the business of how to make money, steps to making money, sources of revenue, how much you should charge, all of this kind of stuff. It's really about building a business as a filmmaker, shooting a lot of different projects and making a business so you can actually then go after making feature films, television series, or whatever else creatively you want. You can actually make a living doing this. It's pretty amazing. So if you want to check out this course, head over to filmtrepreneur.com/FTF. That's filmtrepreneur.com/FTF. Now, before we get started, guys, I want to thank you all for so much support for this new podcast. It is racing up the charts of Apple Podcasts in the filmmaking and indie film category. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you spreading the word. And if you haven't already, please spread the word about this podcast, about the website, and about what we're trying to do, this kind of movement, if you will, that I'm trying to create to help filmmakers change their mindsets on how they can make money and how they can actually make a business out of their filmmaking and their dreams. Now, today, as promised, I am going to bring to you in its entirety the workshop I conducted at the 2019 Hollyshorts Film Festival at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. It is how to become a filmtrepreneur, and we're going to talk all about basic concepts about being a filmtrepreneur, and we start diving into other things as questions start coming in from the audience. But it's really, really valuable, and it went really well, and I can't wait for you guys to listen to this. Without any further ado, please enjoy my talk at the Hollyshorts Film Festival. So hi guys, my name is Alex Ferrari. I run a website called Indie Film Hustle and a podcast of the same name, YouTube channel, and multiple other ways of getting that information out. And what I did is I I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a filmmaker for probably 25 years now, and I've gone through hell and back. I got a lot of shrapnel in me from the film business. I wrote a book, which I'll talk about later, about how I almost made a $20 million movie for the mob, and then ran around Hollywood and met the biggest movie stars and studio heads and all that stuff, but I could talk about that towards the end, and I have books here for sale, but we'll talk about that after. So I've gone through a lot, and I kind of looked, in 2015, I kind of looked around, and I noticed that there wasn't really anybody in the space of like podcasts and blogs that were talking about the film industry from a real ground, in the trenches kind of look, and especially nobody with my kind of street credibility, if you will. So I launched this I launched the New Film Hustle to try to help filmmakers survive and thrive in the film business, and tell them, the truth. I'm known for dropping truth bombs, a lot of tough love, and I try to be inspirational, but I try to be very truthful and honest, brutally honest about this business, because I'd rather you hear it from me than when you're in a room with an executive or an investor and you screw it up. I'd rather you make those mistakes listening to me or something like that and you learn those lessons. So I've been, since 2015 we launched and have the #1 filmmaking podcast on iTunes, and all sorts of other great stuff, and it's been very wonderful to do that over the course of years. I also launched Bulletproof Screenwriting, which is another podcast and another site dedicated to just screenwriting completely. And recently I launched Filmtrepreneur.com. Now, Filmtrepreneur is something very close to my heart because I've been an entrepreneurial guy since I was like 6. I was running garage sales when I was like 10 or 11. And I was the only 12-year-old with a wad of cash in middle school, which was like $100, but for me back then, that's a lot of cash running around for a 12-year-old. So I've always been very entrepreneurial in my way, and I decided to open up Filmtrepreneur because I felt again that there's a lack of information about how to actually make money with your film. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of gurus, a lot of things that that they say, oh well, you gotta do this, or hybrid distribution, or sell a T-shirt, or this and that, and it's very kind of loosey-goosey. And I wanted to kind of lay down a real deep dive and a real blueprint in it. So I'm about to release a new book called Rise of the Filmtrepreneur: How to Turn Your Film into a Money-Making Business. Rise of the Filmtrepreneur. It's on Amazon and hit the #1 best-selling pre-orders already. So apparently somebody wants to read it, which is great. So I'm in the middle of writing it, so it'll be out in October. And I'll give you links to all that stuff at the end. But so I launched Filmtrepreneur about 3 or 4 weeks ago. The podcast is up and running as well, and that's we're already ranked, I think, 6th on Filmmaking and iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever they call it now. And the reason I, again, launched is because I wanted to get that information out there. And the origins of Filmtrepreneur for me was in 2005 when I launched or I released my very first short film. And in 2005, there was no information about how to make a movie online. YouTube had literally just started. It was pre-Google, it was pre-everything. And I looked everywhere to find information about how to make a movie. I know it's hard to conceive this, I'm an old man. I know it's hard to conceive a world that there's no tutorials on YouTube, but there just wasn't any information. So when I made my short film, I made an $8,000 action short called Broken. And in that short, I said, well, I was in West Palm Beach, Florida at the time, no stars, I was nobody. And I said, well, how am I gonna make any money with this? Sure, we go down the festival circuit and all that kind of stuff, but I'm like, I wanna make some money, how do I do it? So what I did is I started the basic principles of being a filmtrepreneur. I started looking at the marketplace. I'm like, okay, so who's my target audience? Who would wanna watch this movie? Well, filmmakers. Because filmmakers would wanna know how I was able to shoot an $8,000 action short in 2005 using Final Cut Pro 3, Shake to do visual effects, which we had over 100 visual effects shots in it, and we shot it on the DVX 100A. Anybody here know what I'm talking about? Panasonic? Nope. Wow, I'm old. Okay, thank you. The best camera ever. When it came out, it's the first camera that shoot 24p, so it looked like real filmic. And I was able to create a really filmic look out of that camera. Nobody had done that at that point. So I said, well, there's a lot of people excited about this movie. Why don't I put together a guerrilla film school? And I'll put it on a DVD. So I spent 6 weeks designing a product, which was creating everything from pre-production, production, post-production, marketing, everything. And it was about 3.5 hours plus like 5 or 6 commentary tracks. DVDs are these disc-like things. So I started targeting my audience online, and at the time was MySpace and message boards. So I started putting that trailer out everywhere I could. During 2004, 2005, you couldn't go anywhere in the world to any message board in the world and not hear about this film. I was insane. I had no girlfriend. I had no family. So I was basically 7 to 8 hours a day just marketing, pounding it left and right. So when I launched it, all I remember is I put out the email because I created an email list before I even knew what an email list was. And then I sent out the email, hey guys, it's ready. And I built up the release of it. And when I released it, I will never forget the sound of PayPal. My emails just going ding, 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 ding. And we sold probably about 300, 400, 500 DVDs that day. It was insane, at $20 a pop. Now, we had no infrastructure on how to mail all those, so we had to handwrite them all, stamp them with our fingers, like with old school stamps. We figured that out afterwards, but that first 400 or 500 was rough. And we ended up selling over 5,000 units. So we made close to about $100,000 off of that. And to this day, I'm still making money off that. It's still a revenue stream for me. I put it online, I added it with some other short films I did, created packages, and I just constantly made different product lines for it. And then I used it on my website, create other ancillary revenue coming in through that, do articles and podcasts about it, doing talks like this about it. It just never stops paying off. And that is the basic principle of being a film entrepreneur, is creating multiple revenue streams from your project, from your film, to look at your movie as a business. Now, we're all artists. We all want to be artists. I wish I didn't have to think about movies. I didn't think about money. But unfortunately, we do, because we are in one of the most expensive art forms on the planet, basically. So when you look at a movie, you have to kind of look at it as a business. So a few things you have to think about, kind of like guidelines I kind of lay out. A lot of filmmakers, and I talk to a lot of filmmakers in my line of work, they'll just make a movie just like, hey, I got this idea. I'm going to make a romantic comedy with my friends, and I'm going to mortgage my house for $200,000 because I need the Alexa. And I've never shot a movie before, though, but it's okay. I've seen it on TV, so it should be fine. And they go off and they make this movie, and then at the end of it, they have a $200,000 debt. And now they're just looking like, how do I sell this? What do I do? Because they're thinking about it like a studio. They're thinking about it like the legacy models of distribution. That's why you then go to these predatory distributors, and they give you a horrible deal. You basically donate the movie to them for 10 years, and if you see a dime, I'll be impressed. But they didn't do any of the research. They didn't think about this as a business. They didn't approach it like a business. So because they didn't, they lost. And then you basically get one of those shots. Unless you're independently wealthy, you're not going to get another shot like that again. So it really hurts me as a filmmaker. And I want filmmakers to be able to continue doing what they love to do. So the very first thing you have to do in today's marketplace, which is how many people here have 15 shows sitting in their queue right now waiting to watch that are amazing, right? Amazing. Like before, to get like The Wire or The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, it was a rarity. Now every week there's a new show on Netflix or on Amazon, on Hulu, something like that. So the competition is fierce for eyeballs. So how can the humble independent filmmaker break through all of that? The key is niching down. The riches are in the niches. Remember that. The riches are in the niches. So if you're thinking about it, think about your own habits. Let's say you're a skateboarder or a surfer, and you're roaming through Netflix, and you see a surfing movie. You see a surfing documentary. Is that going to cut through the clutter a little bit faster than if it was just a normal documentary about being a plant-based thing or whatever it is? Probably, because it's something that interests you. I do it all the time. When I'm scanning through it, I see something that interests me, I'll put it on my list faster than watching the latest amazing show. I'm literally just starting The Wire. I'm on season 4 of The Wire right now. That's how far back I'm at, you know? So when you, sorry, The Wire threw me off. So when you are able to niche down, that's the way you're going to cut through and able to get to your audience. So let's say you're going to do a project. So the first thing you do is like, okay, who's my audience? So you have to start thinking about who's your audience. Okay, I always use this example, so please forgive me, but if you've heard it before, the Vegan Chef movie, okay? We're going to make a romantic comedy about a vegan chef that meets a meat eater and all hell breaks loose, okay? And that's just kind of like Romeo and Juliet, but with plant-based meat eaters. So we're going to make a vegan chef movie. Like, okay, so who's my demographic? Well, obviously vegans. So I can target this to vegans. So that's a niche. Now there's some spill-off as well. There's vegetarians, there's people keto, there's people who are interested in just general plant-based. There's also people interested in romantic comedies. But now once you start getting into that romantic comedy, well, that's a big, huge niche that you can't hit. Studios spend hundreds of millions of dollars to get your awareness on their latest romantic comedy. You don't have that ability. You've got to be able to cut through all of that with the niche. The niche is the power. That's what's going to make you stand out. And when you're able to get to that niche, you'll be able to target that niche through Facebook ads, through YouTube, building your own, cultivating that own audience, which is my next step. Once you understand who your niche audience is, how do you start engaging with them? Why don't you do some market research with them? Start putting out, become friends with them, go on Facebook groups, go on Facebook pages, go on message boards, and just start talking to members of your audience and going, hey, I'm thinking of doing a romantic comedy about vegan chefs. What do you think? Why don't you, what would you call it? What would you like to see in it? Things like that. Start really designing the product for the consumer, not creating a product and let's throw it out into the marketplace and see what happens. You've got to engineer it, completely reverse engineer it, as opposed to, and that's what the studios do, by the way. Independent filmmakers don't, because we're artists. We don't think that way. You have to start thinking that way. So once you start engaging your audience, start cultivating that audience. Start creating content for that audience. And that content could be anything from funny memes, you can entertain them, you can educate them, or you can inspire them. And people will start, you create those accounts, let's say, so the Vegan Chef account or the movie, let's say. And you start putting that kind of content out there, people will start following you purely because they're interested in being vegans, let's say. So you start building that audience up, and I'm talking about a year before you roll camera. This is not an easy path, but it's a path that works, and I'll show you examples of how it does work. So you continue to build that up, and then as you're going through that, include them in the process, build them in. I did this with my first film, This Is Meg, which I'll talk about in a minute with my audience. So you start building that rapport, that audience, and slowly but surely you're starting to build an audience. Now you're also able to target those audiences very, very strategically with basically the greatest marketing tool ever created, which is Facebook and Google. As much as we might not like them having as much information as they do, they literally can be targeted within a mile of where you want them to. It's insane. Once you get into the Facebook back end, I can target a filmmaker, a vegan who makes over $50,000 a year, who is single, who, all this kind of stuff, and it's a romantic comedy, or just got into a relationship. It's insane. So you need to learn this stuff and be able to use it because the tools are there. You can make this work. It's there. It's about the work, and if you want to put that work into what you're doing. So once you create this product, you then have the choice of how am I going to release it? And also the other question you have to ask yourself is, what budget range does this audience justify? Just because you have a niche audience doesn't mean that it justifies a $500,000 budget or $1 million budget. You have to go, okay, well, how much of this audience really can it support? Can the vegan movie cost $20,000 and make a profit? It better, or else you're not in the right business. Can it do it with $50,000? Can it do it with $100,000? You really got to think about how you're going to get your ROI, your return on your investment, and think about that very clearly, because that's where most filmmakers don't. They just don't think about the money. They think about the art, the beautiful art. But without I always say the word business, there's the word show and there's the word business, and the word business has twice as many letters as the word show. And there's a reason for that. Because without that business, there is no show. So once you create that product and you've now got a budget, you then make your movie. But before you release it, how are you going to release it? Are you going to self-distribute it? Are you going to partner with traditional distributors? Are you going to, what is your windowing strategy? How are you going to get it out into the world? Depending on the budget, certain budget ranges, self-distribution is great. Now, self-distribution, how many people obviously here have heard of self-distribution? Everybody here has heard of self-distribution? Okay. So does everyone think that that's a great way of distributing your film? Yeah, it's a way, right? How many people here have heard of a successful self-distribution campaign? Okay then. Right. So the reason why it's difficult to self-distribute, and by the way, I've self-distributed my films and I have tons of case studies of people making money with it, but it's not a good candidate for every movie. If you have a $500,000 movie, man, you really need to know what you're doing. I can count on one hand how many movies that I know of that have made over $500,000 in returns self-distributing exclusively. It's a rare bird. But a lot of filmmakers I'm just going to put it up on iTunes and Amazon and just start counting the money when it comes in. I see some giggles, but those people. Or the best distribution plan ever is I'm just going to enter Sundance, right? That's it, right? And then you get a check and move to the Hollywood Hills. Isn't that the way it works? So you have to figure out how you're going to get it out there. So all this stuff is thought out way before you ever shoot, before you get a script, before you even create your product. You should be thinking about all of this stuff prior to it. Because if you're thinking about all of this stuff prior to it, you have a much higher success rate. You have the option of actually making some money with your movie. So once you figure out your distribution pattern, if you're going to self-distribute, if you're going to do hybrid distribution, how many of you guys have heard hybrid distribution? One person, okay. So a couple people. So hybrid distribution is something that was coined by Peter Broderick, a filmmaker consultant. And hybrid distribution is basically a combination of traditional distribution mixed with a self-distribution model. And it works for some movies, without question. But the big thing about it is it's not the end. For me, hybrid distribution is one of the multiple ways that you can generate revenue with your movie. So hybrid distribution is great, which means, let's say you're going to self-distribute it in the theaters, you're going to four-wall it in the theaters, rent the theater out and sell tickets, do that, or do a tug or a gather, do something along those lines, do public screenings, do community screenings, do on-demand stuff, even educational stuff, going to colleges and stuff like that. That's all a theatrical one. And you could do that. Then you could partner up with, let's say, a DVD distributor who's just going to be doing brick and mortar DVD distribution. And you go down that road. And then you just give them the US DVD rights. Then you carve out, your SVOD or TVOD, subscription-based and transactional-based video on demand. And you could do that through an aggregator yourself, or you can hire a company to do it, not hire a company, but partner with a traditional distributor to do that as well. It gets complicated. I mean, we only have an hour, so I'm just kind of glazing over a bunch of this stuff. But once you understand that aspect of it, we create our movie. So now we're getting it out there. But where the filmtrepreneurial spirit really comes in is what other revenue streams can you create for your film? And this is where you have to think really outside the box. So let's go back to our vegan movie. So let's say I have a vegan audience that I've cultivated for the last year. Would it make sense to create a online course on how to cook vegan? Would that make sense? Would it make sense to also partner with maybe a celebrity vegan chef? Maybe even put them in the movie because they have a huge social media following and they can also help get the word out about the film? Would that make sense? And maybe if you partner with them on the thing, let's say it's a 50-50 split, and then he starts selling or she starts selling these on their website while you're selling it on yours. You could be making more money off of the course than you could ever make off the movie. And the movie is almost a lost leader. So thinking about that kind of revenue stream. Obviously ancillary products like t-shirts, hats. If you put a t-shirt out, it's like, Kale rocks. Which there is a t-shirt that says Kale rocks. But would your audience be interested in that kind of product? Think about that kind of thing. Because you have to look at it as an audience, a consumer base, and what products can you sell to them? The movie is just one product. It's one product in a slew of others. The quote that's very famous that George Lucas says is, "The money's in the lunchbox, idiots." And it's the truth. You know, they made a lot of money with Star Wars, but I promise you they made a hell of a lot more money on those action figures, lunchboxes, and all the other things that they've made over the course of the last 30 or 40 years. You know, I have a friend of mine who works at Disney. He's an animator at Disney, and I was talking to him about Frozen. And Frozen made over $1 billion in the box office. And I asked him, I go, so how much do you make on like the other stuff they sell? He's like, oh, do you know those dresses? Like, yeah, the dresses that the little girls wear. You know, when Elsa was the thing and you can get that damn song off the radio. Remember that one? Yeah. So they're like, yeah, they made $1 billion off the dresses. Just the dresses. Not the plethora of other ancillary products that they created off of that one film. You have to, as an independent filmmaker, think that way. The difference between Frozen and a $50,000 feature film is that Frozen had Disney to generate that audience awareness. They have the money, the marketing muscle, the infrastructure to get the audience's attention. You have to have a smaller audience that you can get their attention, you can cultivate, you can grab in and bring into your world, into your ecosystem. This is a completely different way of looking at filmmaking. It really is. There isn't anything out there that I've heard of like this. There's little things here and there, but nothing like this. So then you create an online course. You can create an online course, t-shirts, products that are based on it. There was a swimming documentary that I use as a case study in my book, and they were selling skull caps, you know, the swim caps with the logo of the movie. That's what their audience wants. That's something built specifically for their audience. You know, there's a great movie. How many people have seen the movie or heard of the movie Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead? That juicing documentary, right? Well, Joe, I forgot his last name, Joe Press or something like that. Joe Cross. Joe Cross made this documentary about juicing where he was really overweight, sick, really bad, and then he juiced for like 90 days and his life changed. And it really kind of launched the whole juicing craze in the world, really. And he was a businessman before he made this. He was not a filmmaker, he was a businessman, so that's what's so wonderful about his story. So he was looking at this completely differently than we were. So he made this documentary, he partnered with a juicing manufacturer right away. It's like, hey man, I'm making a juicing movie, do you want to, let me spotlight your juicer in my movie while I'm going cross country. And they're like, sure, that's great. So they did that, and then when they released the movie, he did all the things I talked about, theatrical screenings, community screenings, because it was health-based, so many like these little like churches and other places like that would come in and have him talk, so then he was being paid to talk as well. Then as that cycle started going, then he put it out on Netflix, he put it out on, so it was like multiple different windows that he was releasing this film. He made millions off of just that. But then what's wonderful about him is that he's like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to create other products along this. So he has services targeted at the core niche audience of people who are interested in juicing. So if you want to juice, you can hire one of his many consultants to help you through the program. He's got cookbooks, juicing books, he's got consulting things, he's got full-blown programs, courses, online courses, and of course, you know, t-shirts and things like that. He speaks around the world, and they pay him to speak around the world. That's income, guys. That's ancillary income. That's residual income coming in from the movie. You have to think about all the different tentacles that you can put out to get money from your movie, and that is one of them. And then he made Fat, Sick, Nearly Dead 2, and then he made a kids juicing documentary. But then what I found really cool about him is he started giving the movie away. He gave it away. When I went to go buy my juicer, because after I saw the movie, I had to go buy the juicer, obviously. He made some sort of special deal with the juicing company, because the juicing company's like, holy cow, like, they're flying off the shelf. I'm like, yes, I know. We need to partner now. And they did. I went to Bed Bath & Beyond to buy my juicer, and what was sitting right next to the juicing aisle? The DVD. You buy a juicer, you get the DVD for free. Then he started putting it out. Now you go to his website, just give him your email, you can watch the movie for free. Because he wants you in his ecosystem. And this is, I don't know, how old is that movie now? Probably 5 years old, something like that. 5, 6 years old. Still making money with it. It's an entire industry based around it. Another documentary, Forks Over Knives, did the exact same thing. Food Matters was another one. On the narrative side, how many people here have heard of Kung Fury? That short film from the Netherlands about like this amazing 80s, it's an amazing short film. But they created insane amounts of ancillary products that they sold. They sold like leather jackets. It became like a cult thing. By the way, for fans of Kung Fury, they are shooting the feature this summer, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to be in it. So just for everybody knowing. And it was like a little crowdfunding thing. And I didn't even talk about crowdfunding. That's another conversation. So that's how you have to look at your film. And also, there's a movie called Off the Tracks. It's a documentary about the editing program Final Cut. How boring. And like when I found out, I'm like, dude, you made a documentary about a piece of software? Like, I get it because I was an editor, and I actually was interested in watching it because I was his audience. But I'm like, dude, why did you do this? He's like, well, I kind of just wanted to put myself out as like an industry leader or a thought leader in the editing space. I wanted to get more gigs as an editor. And then I also met every top power player in the editing world. Like everybody from software guys at Apple to, guys who run post-production houses and high-end, famous editors and all this stuff. He was able to talk to all of them. Why? Because he was making a documentary about it. His end game wasn't to make money with it. His end game was to get more notoriety, which in turn got him more gigs. Now he's basically, I talked to him the other day, he's like, I think I'm just gonna put it up on YouTube now because I've made a lot of money off of it already, and I'm good. You gotta look at movies completely differently, guys. It's they're not all supposed to be Paranormal Activity. You're not gonna make $200 million. It's not gonna happen. Does it happen? Sure. Do people win the lottery? Sure. But they only show the winner. They never show the millions of losers every week. And that's what Hollywood's really good at. They're really good at showing that winner with the check, because it could be you. So you've got to look at films differently, and that's what Filmtrepreneur is all about, and that's what the website's all about. And I kind of glazed over a bunch of stuff, but that's the basis of it. It's I want you guys to start thinking differently about filmmaking. Start thinking about a film as a product. And I'm not trying to dismiss the art. The art is good. Some of the greatest filmmakers, some of the greatest artists ever are amazing businessmen. Spielberg, Lucas, Coppola, not so much, but he had a lot of financial issues. But a lot of great filmmakers understand. Chris Nolan, you don't think he's a businessman? You don't think he knows what he's doing? You think they're going to give him $200 million for some crazy movie that, like, what? James Cameron, all these huge monsters, titans of our industry, they're all businessmen or businesswomen. All of them. You've got to start thinking that way. That's the only way you're going to survive. And as things get more competitive, more diluted, there's going to be much more crushing of competition. Because if you think it's bad now, wait 5 years. Where do you think it's going to be in 5 years when there's like 15,000 streaming services? We're in a world pre-Disney Plus, pre-Apple TV, pre-NBC Comcast. We're in pre all of that right now. Wait till that comes out. And then all the other ones. I have a streaming service. I have a streaming service called IndieFilmHustle.TV, which is a streaming service dedicated to filmmakers and screenwriters. So it's all about like courses and movies about filmmaking, all that stuff. It's aimed at my demographic. It's aimed at my niche. How many people here have heard of Blue Ocean, the Blue Ocean strategy? Yeah, right? So the Blue Ocean strategy is one of the cornerstones of being a filmtrepreneur. When we look at the ocean and the fish in that ocean as customers, okay? So let's say that we're gonna make a horror movie. So just a generalized horror movie. Well, there's a lot of money to be made with a horror movie, but there's also a tremendous amount of competition. So you would argue that that ocean is red because there's a lot of competition, there's blood in the water, everyone's fighting for that same dollar. But then all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm gonna make a ghost movie. Okay, well, that ocean's a little bit less complicated, a little less competition. Well, how about if I make like an 80s horror kind of ghost story, like Poltergeist? Ooh, all of a sudden now you just drop that niche even more. So now that ocean's starting to get a little bit more blue, less competition. You're standing out of the crowd. You're making something that's not as generic as everything else out there. So by doing that, you want to live in the blue ocean. Now, the blue ocean's scary because there's nobody there a lot of times, or there's fewer people there. But for someone who's smart, who knows what they're doing, man, you can clean house. And if you're smart about it and you keep your overhead low, which is something I yell from the top of my lungs, keep your overhead low, people, please. If someone gave me right now $500,000 to make a movie, I would make like 10, 15 movies. Why? Because you're diversifying your portfolio. You've got much bigger chances of making money back than you would if you gamble it all on one. Does that make sense? You gotta look at this as a business, guys. You've gotta look at this as a business. You know, my first feature is called This Is Meg. I made it for about $5,000. And I know a lot of you are like, how do you do that, $5,000? Made it with $5,000, and that movie, and I had a great cast, all SAG actors, you know, people that you would recognize if I, gave you, because I had friends who knew friends. I'm like, hey, do you guys want to come make a movie? We're going to shoot this in 8 days. We're going to have a whole lot of fun. And, we'll have like 2 or 3 crew members. It'll be good. And we did. And we did the whole thing really great. And it came out wonderfully. And then I was like, okay, how am I going to sell this? And I was selling it to my audience as I was doing it. I was talking about how I was going to make it to my Indie Film Hustle tribe and going through that whole process. And we released it. We did really well with it. We crowdfunded it, by the way, first. So I already was in the black while I was shooting it. Like we crowdfunded, I think, $15,000. So I made it for $5,000. So I'm like, let's just experiment. I'm good. That's a great place to be as a filmmaker. As a business person, it's like, oh, all our costs are covered, so let's just have some fun. And that's exactly what I did. I went out there and I just tried to experiment and do things differently so I can report back to my audience. Like, I tried this. We ended up selling it to Hulu. So we got licensed to Hulu for over a year. This is a $5,000 movie. Then I partnered with, I did a strategic partnership with an international distributor, traditional distributor, sold it in China, South Africa, England. I'm like, what? This is like a dramedy. Apparently, I was able to sell it all over the world. And then I'm still generating revenue off of it to this day. I've included it in courses. I'm going to be including it in case studies, all this kind of stuff. And I'm still generating money off of that $5,000 movie. My second film, I was like, $5,000, I was just a little bit too rich for my blood. Let's make the next one for $3,000. And then, and let's take everything up a notch. We're going to shoot it in 4 days. Like, okay. Oh, and let's shoot it at Sundance, because no one's ever actually shot a movie at Sundance before. About filmmakers trying to sell their movie at Sundance. I could not design a product better for my audience than a movie about filmmakers. It's kind of like Spinal Tap and Best of Show meets filmmakers, basically. I wanted to make kind of the Spinal Tap style film about how ridiculous we all are and how the egos and all this kind of stuff is. And we did. We shot the whole thing in 4 days. I came back home, didn't even know if I had a movie. I really didn't. I was like, hey, well, and we had a movie. It was great. I'm going to be releasing it soon. I've been so busy with so many other things. My audience is like, what's going on? When are we going to release this movie? And I partnered with a strategic partner for distribution, because I'm not going to self-distribute. I'm it's a little hybrid of that, but that movie's already generated money for me. And I'm kind of in the black already from that, because I've created courses and other things like that. It's going to be on my platform, so I'm going to be giving it to for people who are subscribers of my platform, and you can rent it on my platform. That's part of my deal. And then we're going to go internationally with it. It's going to be insane. But I'm always thinking about how I can generate more revenue and create other products with it. So does everything I said make sense to everybody here? Does it make sense? Yeah, go ahead. I'll start. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Blue Ocean. Yeah.
But you're talking about a topic, like a subject matter, or a film that's unique.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are averse to that, right? Because they ain't ready, or that they want the formula of something that they know works.
Who's they?
Whomever is financing.
Who's ever financing it?
Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So if you're looking for money and you don't have a track record, you're gonna play in their ball. You're gonna play in their sandbox. But if you go out and make a movie or two for $5,000 or $10,000, and you play this game, like I can walk in and I could probably get $100,000 for a movie. I could probably get $500,000 for a movie. if I chose to, because I've already proven the model, and I have, I've built up my audience and all that kind of stuff that I can probably do something with that. But I don't like asking money for money. I'd much rather make a $10,000 movie and have complete control to do whatever the hell I want than to have somebody else's $50,000. That's the kind of person I am. I don't even like crowdfunding. I did it once, I won't do it again. Because I was just like, I just don't want to ask people like, hey guys, I know I'm a grown-ass man. And I got a family and I live in LA, but I need you to donate $20 to my cause. Like, it was so grinding to me, but I went through it because I wanted to go through it once. I wanted to show my audience how to do it, what to do it, the inside workings of it. And we were successful with it. It wasn't like we raised $1 million or anything like that, but it was successful with it. So I always try to keep that budget as low as humanly possible, because the lower the budget, the faster you'll get into the black, period. But you have to keep that budget low, but able to still produce a product that it's going to be it's of high quality. In today's, and again, the reason I was able to make those movies for $5,000 and $3,000, because I did a lot of heavy lifting. I've been in the business for 25 years. I have a lot of tools in my toolbox. I'm the cinematographer, I'm the editor, I'm the, literally probably, I changed the names in the credits. I have 2 aliases, Mongo Wilder and Jalapeno Humperdinck, which both have IMDb credits. You can look them up. Because I got tired of seeing my name like again and again, like it just looks weird. So I made up those names. But you've got to keep building those tools and putting those tools in those toolboxes, and then partnering with people at the beginning. If you don't have the money to do it, like, look guys, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it this fast, and take these courses. I don't know, but you've got to figure out how to make those movies out of lower budget, and there's no excuse. I shot the Sundance movie on the corner of Ego and Desire on a $1,000 pocket camera at 1080p, not 4K, not 6K, 1080p, and it was right here it was projected here at the Chinese a few months ago, and I had never seen it projected, and I was shocked. I was like, holy cow, this looks amazing. It looked beautiful. We ran around with a camera this big with a monopod and a sound guy who laved them up. That was it, guys. That was the movie. And the only time we lit anything is when we were inside and we had one light that we bounced wherever we wanted to. We had one LED, not 15 light, one. And it looks fantastic. Depends on the kind of movie you're trying to make too, obviously. If you're making a period piece, it's probably not going to work for you. But you should be making a period piece at $5,000. So, yes, you had a question, sir? Blue Ocean strategy, yeah. No, you just look. So, what's the genre you're looking at? I'm sorry? Dramedies. Okay, so first off, dramedies don't sell. So you got to look. That's the first thing. Dramedies are very difficult to sell because they don't travel well, and generally speaking, comedies and dramedies for independent films are hard to sell, especially in international market space. It's just the truth. Now, if you make a movie for $5,000, you have a much better chance of making some money with it. So it's all depending on how, like, if you're going to make a dramedy, keep that budget as low as humanly possible. So if you, again, make the vegan chef movie, someone needs to make my vegan chef movie. I've talked about it so often. It's a perfect scenario where you're making a dramatic comedy, but you angle it in a way. So how about if it's surfers? I don't know, romantic dramedy about surfers, about skateboarders, about people who love to dress up as vampires. There's a movie that just came out called Bite Me, Yeah, and I'm gonna have them on the show soon. And they made a dramedy about people who, it was great. It's a great concept. People who created a religion and wanted that tax write-off, exempt, and the IRS agent who's investigating them. And that's, I'm like, oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Two worlds collide. It's great. So there you go. So you have to kind of think outside the box and start looking at different niches and then fit it in the movie that you want to make. You can make a horror movie about, how funny would it be, like a horror comedy about vegans? I mean, come on. There's blood, gore everywhere. It would be amazing. They're locked in a meat locker. Come on, it's writing itself, people. So, but that's where I would look for it. And the book is called The Blue Ocean Strategy. If you guys want to look for that book, it's on Amazon. It's a great listen on Audible. It really does help you start thinking about that. If you go to filmtrepreneur.com, or if it's easier, filmmakingbusiness.com takes you straight to Filmtrepreneur. There's a books page there. I have a bookstore there. I have a list of all the books that I recommend that I've read that help on this process, from side hustles and how to make extra money on the side, to marketing, to product creation, to self-development, which I haven't even touched about self-development, because that alone is a huge problem. Because, how many of us stop ourselves from making a movie because of our own crap? How about that voice in our head that's saying you're not good enough, you're an imposter, you can't do this? Like, how many of us, I think every filmmaker goes through this. I've heard of, I've heard Spielberg, I've heard Nolan, I've heard all these guys go through it. We all go through it. But if I could teach you everything you want to know about how to make a movie, how to sell a movie, how to make money with a movie, but if you can't get up out of bed to actually go do it because you're in your own head, you got to change your mindset. So, and we talk about a lot about that on Filmtrepreneur as well. I have full podcast dedicated to just kind of helping you break through your own crap, because we all have it. Any other questions? Yes, sir. And the American flag, sir.
Absolutely. Captain America.
Yes, Cap.
Not so much of a question, but an observance that we do, which wasn't touched upon, which is networking. Mm-hmm. And we do a lot of networking, and we also get involved in charity work.
Yeah.
So I'm more passionate because I have made it. Now I'm in that phase of giving the money away. Mm-hmm. Through my charity.
Great.
So I do a lot of charity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you meet a lot of people through that and networking, that then comes back to the circle of, hey, it'd be cool, let's make a movie together. Let's do that. Hey, that'd be fun. Mm-hmm. Because making movies, as I have for a number of years, it's a marriage. And do I want to be married to this person for a couple of months or whatever? And then once you build your team, then it's like, hey, let's make another movie. And then you go,
Sure.
So that's one thing. One observation I found is the networking, even for my charity work, and then the blue ocean that you were talking about. I'm glad you touched upon that, because it's like when everybody's like going over this way,
you gotta go the other way.
Let's look over here.
Well, perfect example is faith-based movies. I mean, look at the explosion of faith-based movies over the course of the last decade. Before you would never, you would see the Jesus of Nazareth movie on Easter, and that would pretty much be the end of it. But there was a huge niche audience, a huge demographic of people that were not being served. And then some savvy filmmakers said, hey, you know what? We're going to start going out there and start making product for this audience. And they did. Kirk Cameron of Growing Pains fame, he's cornered the market in faith-based movies. He did Fireproof and all these other movies, and these movies made tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. It's insane. But they identified an audience that needed to be served. So when you're looking for that audience, look for an audience that is being underserved, and then provide the best product, the best service you can to that audience. In the horror genre, Hatchet. Remember Hatchet? They positioned themselves as an 80s slasher movie, American-made slasher movie. That's how they positioned themselves, and they did gangbusters on it. And they don't have any stars on it. They had a big hatchet on the cover. That was it. It was a big hatchet. It wasn't Freddy Krueger. It was a hatchet. That was all they had. But they made a ton of cash. Why? Because they knew their audience, and they went after their audience, and then they gave the audience what they wanted, which was a niche of the horror genre. And then, of course, that spills off to other horror fans. They're like, oh, I want to go back there, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, look at nostalgia. Look what we're going through right now with all the nostalgia of like Stranger Things, and times are rough right now. It's a little weird in the world, and we all want to go back to a time that it wasn't that weird. So that's why nostalgia is so popular right now. I mean, you watch Stranger Things, and if you grew up in the 80s, you're just like, oh my god, this is great, this is amazing. Then if you didn't grow up in the 80s, you're like, what is this? This is crazy. But yeah, so I agree with you. If there's many niches, there's many audiences, that you can go out there and just provide that service for that audience. That's the key, guys. That's the key. It's just making sure that audience is not too large that you can't penetrate it, that you personally can't go, to grab enough of those customers to be able to make the budget make sense for your film. It's just like a product line. It's like, it's a widget. You have to look at it as a widget. Like, okay, I'm going to make a widget. The widget's going to cost me $20,000. How many widgets do I have to sell to break even? And then where's my customer base? Okay, how can I market to that customer base? How much is it going to cost me to market to that customer base? How much can I do grassroots? How can you just have to think about it differently. Just change. I hope today's talk helps you change your way of thinking about making a movie. Any other questions? Sir.
So let's say
vegan
you
chef.
have all the skills that you have,
Yeah.
like being an edit,
Mm-hmm.
never run some, whatever, all the extra costs, and all the scripts you've written are dramedies.
Mm-hmm.
Or you've written dramedy pilots, dramedy,
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Okay.
And you just came to this talk.
This is a for instance, right? This is not you. This is something. It's my buddy John. It's John. I got it. Okay, so John, who's only read dramedy scripts and was planning on making a dramedy script, but has no tools in that toolbox that can help them. Is what you're basically asking? Okay, so John needs to read some other scripts first of all. No, I'm joking. Look, I don't do everything. I partner with people. For Ego and Desire, my producing partner owned the condo in Park City on Main Street, which is like a multi-million-dollar condo that he was letting me crash in, and I just turned to him and I said, "Hey, I think it'd be irresponsible us not to shoot a movie this year." And then he said, "Continue," and I partnered with him, and we partnered like, "Look, I'll give you a piece of the action. Let us base everything out of here. We'll do this." And he's like, "Yeah, that'll be great." And I partnered with him. I didn't own that. That's not something I had in my toolbox. I didn't have a sound guy. I'm not a sound. The sound is where I draw the line. I can't do sound. I hate sound. I love it for my movies, but I can't do it. It's a skill set that I don't want to deal with. And so I partnered with people. I'm like, "Hey, look, give you this or give you that. You got to provide some sort of value to them, whether it's pay them a minimum of something. But never underestimate the power of people wanting to be involved in stuff. They want to be part of something. And if you can present that to them, look, when I made my first short film, Broken, in 2005, I had no track record. I was like coming from nowhere, other than just some editing. Everybody on that show, I paid them something, or I gave them a lot of service. So like all my visual effects guys worked for free. Why? Because they wanted something on their reel. Okay? And the two of my visual effects guys, there's only two guys doing it. One of them ended up at ILM. The other one ended up at Tippett Studios, and they're both working on massive $100, $200 million movies. So, and I always tell them, like, "Where's my check? I need 10%, because if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have gotten shit." But I provided value, and then over the course of the next few years, we built a relationship, so then I started kicking them work, because I was in post. So then I would kick them work, and I'm like, "Hey, I'll be the VFX soup on this. I'm going to give you some jobs." You got to think outside the box. You got to think entrepreneurial. Like, how can I make a deal? How can I make a deal on this, And everyone talks about points, working on the back end. How many people here have ever worked for back end points? How many have ever been paid on back end points? Really? You're the one I heard about. It's a rarity. I always try to pay everybody something, even if it's token, $100 a day, something to be there. And then I'll go look and we'll give you some back end points. And if this turns into paranormal activity, let's all make some money. That's the way I look at it. You just have to look at it that way. Like, hey, if it goes, it goes. I'm not going to be that dude, that's, fighting for Napoleon Dynamite money after the fact, when it turned into a huge mega success. So there's ways of doing it. You just have to think outside the box, and you just gotta hustle, man. You gotta stay on brand. Gotta hustle and just figure out ways that make sense. But when I made that short film, I created an event in my little area. I was in Hollywood, Florida. It's sad, but I was in Hollywood, Florida. And, there wasn't a lot of filmmakers in Hollywood, Florida. There were some here and there, but, I created this whole, like, I'm gonna do something that's so crazy that you should just come with me on this journey to see me succeed or to just see me fall flat on my face. And And that's a really enticing thing, because people want to be challenged, people want to be part of something bigger than they are. And that movie, I mean, it made over, I think we were in 180 to 200 festivals. It got reviewed by Roger Ebert. It just went places. And look, I'm talking about it 15 years later. People still ask me about that movie because of all the noise I made 15 years ago. And on a side note, a little historical fact, it was in the first Hollyshorts Film Festival. I am the only filmmaker that Danny and Theo still talk to from the first festival. Very proud of that. And they've also I've built a relationship with Danny and Theo, the co-founders here of Hollyshorts, that basically every single thing I've ever directed has played here, features and short films, because they're just awesome. And I support them, they support me, and it's building that relationship over the years. This is not a short game, dude. This is a long game. And that's the one biggest piece of advice I give anybody in this business. If you expect it's going to happen in a year or two, add about 8 to 10 years. And then you're just getting started. You gotta love it. If you don't love it, you're going to get eaten alive. So I hope that answered your question. Any other questions? Yes, sir. You're in the front row. You have to ask a question.
So maybe not a difficult question to answer, but when you're talking about some of these like $3,000 or $5,000, keeping it ultra small for your market, I guess the thing that I run into with creating content is just there are drivers that just push the budget if you're following the rules.
Don't follow the rules. Stop following the rules. That's your problem. That's the problem.
That's the problem.
If you're looking at it as they taught you in film school to look at it, or the studio system has taught you about it, you're gonna die. You're not gonna make it.
I mean more like the rules of like you have to have insurance. Like
I mean, yes, of course, you need to have insurance. You also need permits and permission from Sundance.
Yeah.
No.
That's what I'm saying. So just you gotta
look, man.
Guerrilla style.
Look, man. Look. You know, we're pirates. Come on. You know, you gotta work. You know, look. I showed up at Sundance with a camera, a few actors, and a dream. I ran around all of Park City. I shot 2 scenes at Sundance headquarters. I've got Sundance's logo everywhere. I've got a cast of thousands that have no idea they're in the movie. Or maybe they do have some idea because there was cameras, you know. But you just gotta roll it. Do you think just think about it for a second. If I would have pitched you this movie, I'm like, we're gonna go to Sundance to make a movie about filmmakers trying to sell a movie at Sundance. How many people here would have just said, that's not possible. You can't do that. You need permits. You need insurance. I did have insurance for some gear, but that was it. It's very affordable. You should insure gear. Not people, but gear. No, I'm joking. No, but we just kind of ran with it. Actually, I did have liability insurance. I did have liability insurance as well. It was very affordable to do for 4 days. So we went there, and what would you say? What else do you need? Well, you can't shoot with a 1080p camera. That's insane. You've got to shoot at least 4K so you can do some pop-ins, right? You got to have a certain level of quality. My friend has an Alexa, right? He's going to give it to us for free. We should take the Alexa. Okay? How many people is going to take to run that camera? How fast are you going to be able to move? How much attention are you going to bring to yourself? Dude, we're pirates, man. We're pirates. We're hustlers. We got to do what we got to do. I mean, all those, when Robert Rodriguez made Mariachi, he got some permission, but he was hustling other things. You just do what you got to do. All of them did it. Spike Lee, John Singleton, all of these guys. All these guys that my generation grew up with. They all hustled. They all went out there. You think that Richard Linklater in the film Slacker, he got permission to run around Austin with a camera, with a 16mm camera, no less? No. Always be safe. Don't abuse people. Look, I had a guy this is crazy. I had a guy on my show recently with a movie called Wally Got Wasted. It's kind of like Weekend at Bernie's meets Hangover. Sounds fantastic, I know. It was great. They shot with an Alexa, and they said full package, all this stuff in LA. You know what they used to do? Because they didn't have permits, because it's too expensive. It's with the insurance and everything. They would show up to a location with a 5-ton grip truck and full 2-camera airy package and 30 people with no permission. And they just start shooting. Because there's train of thoughts. They should be here, right? Who does this? So by the time that someone's like, there's some people shooting here, what? We didn't give any permission. By that time, they got their shots. And then by the time the security guard that's being paid $10 an hour to show up, the producer would go off and keep him busy for at least 15, 20 minutes while they keep finishing up their shoot. And go, that was like a $250,000, $300,000 movie. They shot in LA. They shot in LA. The worst place on the planet to shoot is in LA. Because everybody wants money, everyone wants permission, everyone's savvy. You gotta do it. And they're selling that movie right now. And they've sold it internationally. If you try to play by the rules, man, you're done. Because you're playing by the rules that somebody else set. And they're not built for you. They're not built for you at all. So you gotta just kind of roll with it. So that's my biggest advice. Again, always be kind, always be help, be safe, do things right, but as long as you're not doing any harm, gotta do what you gotta do. We're pirates. What are you gonna do? Any other questions?
It's just safe to say break the rules, just don't break the laws.
Well, no, man, you gotta break some laws too. Occasionally, I've seen people do just like, there's stuff that they shouldn't be doing, like hanging out of a car with an Alexa, shooting on the highway. Like, you're really dancing that line of safety, There are laws that might be fractured, but not broken. Let's say there's laws that are, I don't know, did I break any laws? I don't think I broke any laws. Morally, I may have broke some laws there, but I don't think, I don't like, but by the way, I did submit to Sundance. I didn't get in, but the biggest, and I was praying for them. I was praying for them to sue me. I wanted to pray. Can you imagine the press? Sundance sues an independent filmmaker trying to make a movie at Sundance. Could you? I would have just prayed for that. I was praying for it. No, they were like, no, we can't get it. But when you send a Vimeo link to like a film festival, and you get like 1 or 2 people watch it. You get like 1 or 2 views. 75 views for the Sundance link alone. It was passed around. Everybody saw that. I'm sure even Robert Redford probably saw that. Like, this son of a... So, yeah, you just gotta roll the punch. Yes, sir.
So you talked about
yes.
The example of documentary style.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any you've done personally, like outside of the shirts and stuff that might be useful for other genres?
Yeah, I mean, like the horror genre, you just build products that the horror audience would like. So like, hats that say I love horror, I love 80s horror, t-shirts, hire a good poster, a guy who designs a good poster and put it on the t-shirt. Like there's a guy that made a movie called, oh God, what was it? Beach Party Massacre. Okay, and it was an 80s style movie. It took him like a year to make. It was, it was a rough situation for him. But he went after one of these artists who drew the VHS covers of like the old 80s horror movies, and he hired him, and he got him, and he made this. That's what caught my eye when he sent me the poster. I'm like, this poster looks great. That poster, he's made more money selling that poster on t-shirts, on hats, on buttons, on pins than anything else. He sold action figures. He sold limited edition headless women, bikini women, because it's a massacre. So, and he's like headless, victim number 1. And there was a guy that was selling. He wasn't making a whole lot of money on them, but he made it. And he was selling them for like $45. Sold out. My favorite thing he did, and I talk about this in the book, is that he would go around to all the thrift stores. This is a filmtrepreneur, all right? This is a filmtrepreneur. He understood his audience very clearly. He went around to every thrift store, every Goodwill, and bought every Disney clam case VHS he could find. Remember those old clam case VHSs? Of all like Pinocchio and Sword in the Stone, all that stuff? He bought as many of them as he could. And if you remember, some of them had different colors. So like green ones and red ones and yellow ones and white ones, as opposed to also the black ones. So what he did was he took all those clam cases, because they're not being made anymore because it's VHS. He replaced the inserts with his own movie. He took off the sticker, put a sticker of his own movie, and just dubbed his movie onto the VHS and sold it as special edition VHSs to his audience, who the horror genre loves old school VHSs. people would buy it. He said he get email. He's like, oh, I just bought it because I thought it was a horror movie I didn't see in the 80s. Because he didn't even conceive that it could be an independent film of today. And he did that. He had like the yellow one was like called Pee in the Pool yellow, algae green, blood red. Like it was, and he had limited editions because obviously he couldn't find any more. And he did that for a while. And he was selling for like $30, $40. You know, is he gonna retire off this? No. Is he gonna make a profitable film? Yes. Can you do like 5 of those movies in the course of the next 5 years? Yeah, now you have a portfolio with multiple revenue streams coming in. And I promise you, if you do that, other opportunities will present themselves. Other business opportunities will present themselves. Other films will present themselves because you're one of the few people who stop talking about making a movie and are actually making movies. And actually looks like you're making a business out of it. And that's when investors start showing up. And that's when money starts showing up. You know, as opposed to just like pitching a movie out of the box, like, hey, I'm gonna do this. No, you gotta show them. Show them what you're doing. Show them what you can do on your own. That's when money comes in. You know, I've been approached with money, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good. That's a great place to be. It's a wonderful place to be. To just like, I'm good. I'm good. I will take the Marvel interview though. I will, and if Marvel calls, I will take that meeting. But I'm good. I'm good. I've built something up for myself as a filmtrepreneur myself, not only through my movies but through my business. And now the movies are just one of many products that I create for Indie Film Hustle, for Filmtrepreneur, for Bulletproof Screenwriting, you know, between workshops and online courses and talks and consulting and books and everything else that I do. I created multiple revenue streams. And within those, there's thousands of other little revenue streams, $5 here, $10 there, because I've created this kind of ecosystem in my world. And it takes time. And it takes a lot of hustle and it takes a lot of savvy to figure it out. But if you put in the time, you know, I'm 4 years in right now to Indie Film Hustle. In July, it was 4 years of me, you know, pounding it out. But I know guys who've been pounding it out for a decade and they're still struggling. But I was able to do that. So it's about thinking it like it as a filmtrepreneur. And again, it's not always about selling the movie. It's not always about just or selling a T-shirt. It's about getting a gig. Like I did a $50,000 short film. Horrible, it's a great example of what not to do. I made a $50,000 short film. I thought it was going to be the one that's the one, this is the one. It looked beautiful, it was awesome. This is the lottery ticket. I'm just waiting for the call. And I got a lot of attention, I took a lot of meetings, I went into development, I got a few investors, and it fell apart, all this kind of stuff, a couple of years. I didn't make my money back through the traditional ways. But I used it as a calling card, and I got more than that back in directing gigs. Doing music videos, doing commercials, doing other things like that. I wouldn't have gotten without that movie. So you have to think of things differently. You know, on the paper, that movie's a failure. But to my career, it wasn't. And then I'm still generating revenue with it, with, you know, courses that I sell, movies that I sell with it. I sold it internationally, on Blu-ray. There's always ways to make money. You just have to think about it differently. Any other questions, guys? How are we doing on time? Anyone? Senor?
Time.
Huh? Am I walking? What does that mean? Wrap it up?
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Thank you, sir. Wrap it up. All right. Last questions? Anyone? Anyone?
Around for the next one.
Yeah, I'm going to be here with my brother from another mother, RV Bato. We're going to talk about how to build an audience for your filmtrepreneurial business, obviously, that we're going to be doing now, right? So, and then really quickly, because I'm a filmtrepreneur, so I'm hustling all the time. What should I call it? Forgive me. So I wrote a book called Shooting for the Mob. Okay, and this book is a chronicle of the darkest time in my entire life, where I almost made a $20 million movie for the mafia. And then, if that wasn't enough, I was actually flown out to LA and I met the biggest movie stars in the world. I met studio executives, heads of huge agencies. I'm 26 and, you know, running around with a psychotic, like Joe Pesci style character, you know, who was threatening my life on a daily basis. He was bipolar, it was insane, it was a horrible and wonderful experience all at the same time. I even got to meet Batman. I went to Batman's house and me and Batman hung out, and it was one of the actors who played Batman, and I was flown out to his house. It was like Wayne Manor. I went to like Wayne Manor. It was insane. There was an Alfred. It was insane. And then just while I was there, Batman's like, hey, I'm going to be in your movie. I'm like, holy cow, Batman's going to be in my movie. He's like, hey, do you want to sleep over? And I'm like, yes, Batman, I want to sleep over your house to talk about the movie. And then, of course, Jimmy, my gangster, he's like, nah, kid, we gotta go. I'm like, when Batman asks you to sleep over, you say yes. So that's this whole story. It's about, it's basically the anti-Rebel Without a Crew. So the Rebel Without a Crew is the success story of Robert Rodriguez, one of the greatest filmmaking books ever written. This is what happens the other side of the fence, where you don't get your dream, but you're still able to get out of it. And I went, after the fact, I went into a deep depression for 2 years. I couldn't even pick up a camera, couldn't even look at the film industry. I was hiding in a garage selling comic books on eBay to make a living. I was 3 days away from filing bankruptcy. It's uplifting. It's a happy thing. It's a happy thing. But everyone who's read it, it has 5 stars on Amazon. It's sold really, really well. It was a bestseller on Amazon already. And if you're a filmmaker, you're gonna feel this, because it's as raw of a book. I've never read a book as raw as this. So I exposed myself in the proper way. I exposed myself emotionally, completely in this, and I wanted it to be a tale of what not to do, an allegory of what not to do when you chase your dream, because I was dangled, that carrot was right in front of me. And it wasn't dangling of you're gonna get the job, it was the potential of getting the job, and I sold my soul to the devil to do that. And how many of you in this room, given this option, what would you do? And so many people in this town right now as we speak are in bad situations because they've signed their soul away for the mere opportunity of making it. So I'll have it here for sale if anybody wants to buy it. I take credit cards and cash. So thank you guys so much. I'll see you in the next panel. I hope you guys got something out of that episode. I really want to give a big shout out and thanks to Danny and Theo, the co-founders of Hollyshorts Film Festival, for allowing me to come in and drop a couple of knowledge bombs, hopefully, on the people in the workshop. So thank you. And for all of you that came out to that workshop, thank you as well. I hope you got something out of it. If you want links to anything I talked about in this episode, including links to my books and anything else, please head over to the show notes at filmtrepreneur.com/011. And as a bonus on the Indie Film Hustle podcast, I will be releasing tomorrow, which is episode 341, will be the workshop or talk that I did with my brother from another mother, RB Bato from Stage 32, about building an audience online. And then we also got into just philosophies about this business, about how to make it in this business, what to do, what not to do, and so on. Really, really great talk as well. So you could check that out. And it will be at indiefilmhustle.com/341. And you could check that out. But if you are a subscriber of this podcast, then you absolutely need to be a subscriber of Indie Film Hustle's podcast, which of course you could just go to filmmakingpodcast.com and sign up on Apple Podcasts, or just go to indiefilmhustle.com and you can sign up there to any place you listen to podcasts. It is an immense resource for filmmakers and for filmtrepreneurs. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really, really appreciate all the support. Again, as always, the power is in your hands. Be a filmtrepreneur. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Filmtrepreneur podcast at filmtrepreneur.com.